In the Gilded Age, overnight train travel was grim. Cold benches, dim lamps, and sleepless misery stretched across the country. Then George Pullman unveiled something unthinkable. Rolling palaces trimmed in walnut and brass, where velvet seats folded silently into private beds. This was not just a new kind of train. It changed who could travel and how Americans saw their own nation. But what secret mechanisms, hidden in those polished carriages, made comfort on the rails possible for the first time? Hidden behind polished walnut panels and velvet drapes, the magic of Pullman's comfort came down to clever mechanics. Each sleeping car was built around a modular section, 8 to a car in the earliest models, where daytime seats transformed into nighttime beds with a few practiced moves. The lower berth, built on sturdy hinges, folded flat from a pair of plush seats into a mattress that spanned the width of the compartment. Overhead, the upper berth rested against the ceiling, nearly invisible by day. At dusk, a porter would unlock a set of latches, then guide the upper berth down using a system of pulleys and counterweights, a design first patented in the 1860s. The motion was smooth, almost theatrical, and required little force thanks to the balanced springs concealed in the walls. In the original 8-section prototype, each pair of seats became a private compartment when thick curtains were drawn. The upper berth's frame, reinforced with steel by the 19-teens, could support a grown adult, while the lower berth locked securely into place for stability. Patent diagrams from the era reveal a precise choreography of levers, hinges, and pins, every element engineered for reliability on a swaying train. A historian of American rail travel describes the Pullman berth as a marvel of compact design, turning a narrow corridor into a 2-story hotel room in minutes. This physical transformation, repeated night after night by Pullman porters, set the standard for comfort on rails. The same mechanics, hinged lowers, ceiling fold uppers, and modular spacing became the blueprint for generations of sleeping cars. What began as a technical solution soon became a ritual, as familiar and reassuring as the rhythm of the rails beneath the floor. Rich walnut veneer wrapped every surface, its deep grain glowing beneath the flicker of brass chandeliers. Walls and ceilings shimmered with a warmth more often found in private libraries than in anything that rolled across the prairie. Passengers entering a Pullman car stepped onto thick carpets, their shoes sinking into piles so dense it muffled the sound of footsteps. The seats, upholstered in velvet or plush mohair, invited travelers to linger. Armrests were capped with polished brass, cool to the touch, catching stray beams of lamplight and scattering them across the compartment. Heavy silk curtains hung from ceiling rails, their folds drawn closed at night for privacy, and opened by day to reveal the world, streaming past wide windows. Each window was framed in carved wood, fitted with gleaming brass latches and hinges. Overhead chandeliers dangled from the center of the ceiling, their cut glass casting delicate patterns on the walnut below. Some cars boasted painted ceiling panels, floral motifs, and gilded flourishes, reminders of the Victorian taste for ornament. At the end of the corridor, a washroom door revealed marble-topped vanities and silver-plated fixtures. Even the smallest details, from the embossed leather straps on luggage racks to the inlaid mother-of-pearl in the smoking compartment, announced a commitment to luxury. For the well-heeled traveler, every surface offered proof of Pullman's promise. This was not travel as endurance, but as indulgence. The scent of polished wood and new upholstery lingered in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of coal smoke from the engine. The interior of a Pullman car was more than a means to an end. It was a destination, a rolling parlor where comfort and status were on display with every mile. Silverware clinked softly against porcelain as chefs in crisp uniforms prepared multi-course meals in the narrow kitchens of Pullman dining cars. By the 1890s, these rolling restaurants had become a highlight of the journey, offering menus that rivaled the finest hotels. Breakfast began with fresh eggs and hot biscuits, while dinner might feature roast beef carved tableside, oysters on the half shell, or delicate pastries, all served on white linen. Waiters moved with practiced grace, balancing trays as the train swayed over the rails. Each meal followed a ritual. Guests were seated at polished mahogany tables, crystal glasses filled, and courses announced in quiet tones. Beyond the dining room, observation cars beckoned travelers eager for a different kind of indulgence. At the rear of the train, rounded glass walls framed the passing landscape like a living mural. High-backed chairs faced wide windows, inviting passengers to linger over a book or simply watch the scenery unfold. Some cars featured open-air platforms, where the wind carried the scent of pine forests or prairie grass. In the golden light of late afternoon, the world outside seemed to slow, each mile a moving panorama. Together, these spaces redefined what was possible on a train. Meals became an event, and the journey itself, a spectacle. For those who could afford it, Pullman offered not just a way to travel, but a way to savor the country, one bite, one view at a time. Uniformed porters moved quietly through the Pullman cars, their steps measured and precise. Each evening, as the last light faded beyond the windows, a porter would begin the turn-down ritual. Sheets were snapped crisp and tucked tight. Pillows plumped and cases changed with practiced speed. Shoes left outside a compartment door would return before dawn, polished to a mirror shine. At every stop, porters swept away coal dust, adjusted curtains, and checked the lamps, ensuring every detail met Pullman's high standards. The work was relentless. Porters managed lighting, heat, fresh towels, and even the temperature of ice water pitchers. They memorized passengers' preferences, from extra blankets to quiet wake-up calls, all while maintaining a calm, unflappable manner. Behind the luxury, porters bore the true weight of the journey. Their wages were low, so tips became their real income, making every smile and gesture part of a delicate economy. Many porters worked 20-hour shifts, sleeping in cramped quarters when they could. Despite the long hours and constant demands, the job held a certain dignity. For generations of black men, a Pullman uniform offered rare status and steady work at a time when few options existed. In 1937, after years of organizing, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters won official recognition. This victory secured better pay, shorter hours, and a measure of respect for thousands of men whose invisible labor had powered the Pullman promise. As one labor historian said, the porters were the quiet architects of American hospitality, serving comfort with grace, even when the world offered little in return. A Pullman ticket was more than a fare. It was a threshold few could cross. In the late 19th century, the price of a sleeping car berth ran more than 5 times the cost of a standard coach seat. That gulf in price was not just about beds and linens. It defined who rode in Pullman comfort and who watched from the platform. For the country's merchants, industrialists, and rising professionals, the Pullman car became both a sanctuary and a stage. To secure a berth was to announce one's standing, to join a select group for whom travel was not a hardship, but a display of taste and means. Newspapers chronicled the comings and goings of prominent passengers, their names listed beside the trains they boarded. Invitations to dine or linger in the observation car carried an unspoken weight, as much about social position as about scenery. The plush carpets and cut glass signaled not only comfort, but exclusivity. Pullman's pricing strategy turned each ticket into a badge of privilege, reinforcing the idea that luxury travel was a reward for success. While thousands journeyed west in crowded coaches, a Pullman berth offered privacy, service, and a sense of arrival. The company's brand thrived on this divide, cultivating an aura that made the Pullman name synonymous with aspiration. In an era obsessed with status, the price of entry mattered as much as the journey itself. Beneath the surface glamour of a Pullman car, engineers waged a quiet battle against the elements. In the earliest days, warmth came from cast-iron floor furnaces fed by coal. Their heat traveled through hidden ducts to chase off the night chill. By the 1870s, steam heat piped from the locomotive replaced the old stoves, delivering steady warmth to every compartment, even as the train sped across frozen prairies. Lighting, too, evolved. First flickering candles, then gas lamps, and finally, by the early 1900s, electric bulbs powered by axle-driven generators that spun as the wheels turned. Passengers no longer read by the uncertain glow of flame, but by the steady light of modern electricity. Above, rows of roof vents and clerestory windows drew in fresh air and carried away smoke and cooking odors, keeping the atmosphere crisp. Every improvement, from steam heat to electric light and ventilation, was tucked out of sight, yet these hidden systems allowed travelers to trust that comfort was always close at hand, no matter the weather outside. Pullman's reach stretched from coast to coast, not by owning tracks, but by forging deals with the nation's biggest railroads. Instead of selling his cars outright, George Pullman leased them to companies like the Chicago, Alton, and St. Louis, and after 1869, to lines running the newly completed transcontinental route. This strategy let Pullman keep control over service and maintenance, ensuring every car met his standards, no matter the railroad. By the 1890s, Pullman cars rolled on nearly every major route in the United States, their presence a guarantee of comfort from New York to San Francisco. Competition followed close behind. Rival firms like the Wagner Palace Car Company, backed by the powerful Vanderbilt family, tried to match Pullman's blend of luxury and innovation. Patent battles and legal fights erupted, but Pullman's early move to standardized designs, especially with steel-reinforced cars, gave him the upper hand. Competitors were gradually bought out or squeezed aside. By the turn of the century, Pullman's name had become almost synonymous with luxury rail travel, and his network of leased cars formed the backbone of American long-distance journeys. By the early 20th century, Pullman's name had become a passport to adventure. For the first time, Americans with means could crisscross the continent not out of necessity, but for the sheer pleasure of the journey itself. Guidebooks promised the wonders of Yellowstone, the grandeur of the Rockies, and the glitter of California's coast, all accessible from the comfort of a rolling parlor. Railroads and travel agents soon bundled Pullman berths with sightseeing tours, advertising package excursions that turned distant landmarks into fashionable destinations. The numbers tell the story. By the 1910s, bookings for leisure travel surged as families and social clubs reserved entire cars for summer holidays or autumn foliage trips. The Pullman experience became a symbol of arrival, a chance to see and be seen among fellow travelers who shared the same appetite for luxury and novelty. As word spread, travel itself became a mark of status, woven into the fabric of American aspiration. Even as new modes of transport waited on the horizon, the golden age of Pullman tourism captured a spirit of possibility, where the journey was as memorable as the places it revealed. By the late 1940s, a new American obsession was rolling off assembly lines in Detroit. Car ownership soared, filling highways with millions of private vehicles. In 1945, just 26 million cars crowded the nation's roads. By 1960, that number had more than doubled. For travelers, the lure of the open road meant freedom, no schedules, no tickets, no porters. Families packed up for vacations to the Grand Canyon or Florida beaches, stopping at roadside diners and motels instead of dining cars and sleeping berths. Meanwhile, commercial aviation was rewriting the rules of distance, The first coast-to-coast passenger flights in the late 1940s took around 16 hours, but by the mid-1950s, new jetliners cut that time in half. By 1959, a jet could cross the continent in under 8 hours. What once took days by rail now fit between breakfast and dinner. Business travelers, pressed for time, booked flights instead of berths. Even the wealthy, once loyal to Pullman's rolling parlors, began to favor the speed and convenience of the skies. Railroads felt the impact almost overnight. Passenger numbers dropped as highways and jet networks expanded. Pullman's signature cars, once the symbol of luxury, stood idle in sidings or were retired altogether. The company watched its share of the travel market shrink, not from lack of comfort, but from the relentless pace of new technology. The age of the automobile and the jet had arrived, and with it the golden era of luxury rail travel began to fade. In the 1960s, the world of American railroads entered a period of sweeping change. Years of falling passenger numbers forced railroad executives and federal regulators to confront an uncomfortable reality. Luxury trains were no longer sustainable. The Pullman Company, once the undisputed standard-bearer of comfort on rails, found itself squeezed by the rise of highways, commercial jets, and a public that no longer traveled by sleeper car. Boardrooms filled with anxious discussions as railroad companies weighed their options and searched for a way to stem mounting losses. Federal policy set the stage for consolidation. The Transportation Act of 1958 gave the Interstate Commerce Commission new authority to approve mergers for the sake of efficiency. Railroads that had once competed for Pullman's business now joined forces, combining networks in a bid to survive. The Penn Central merger, uniting New York Central and Pennsylvania Railroad, became the largest in American history, taking effect in February 1968. Other lines, such as Norfolk and Western and Southern Railway, absorbed regional carriers, streamlining operations and slashing duplicate services. For Pullman, these mergers spelled the end. As railroad management shifted focus to freight, luxury passenger service became a burden. Railroads began withdrawing from Pullman's operating agreements, cutting routes and retiring opulent sleeping cars. The Pullman Company, already separated from its manufacturing arm by antitrust rulings in the 1940s, operated at the mercy of its railroad clients. By late 1968, the last Pullman sleeping cars were quietly removed from service. The doors closed at midnight on December 31, 1968, ending over a century of rolling palaces. What had once been the height of American travel faded away, not with a single decision, but through a decade of board votes, regulatory filings, and the slow retreat of luxury from the nation's rails. Luxury on rails once defined what America aspired to: comfort, prestige, and connection across vast distances. Today, as rail travel seeks revival amid climate pressures and urban congestion, the Pullman legacy challenges us to imagine not just transit, but experience. The question is no longer what is possible on a train. It is what we demand for the journeys ahead. Thanks for traveling with us.